Hello and namaskar. You're watching KATV India with me Varsha Venugopal, and today we are diving into three major stories that will impact India's economy and consumers daily. First, the government's big GST reform and why micro SUVs may emerge as the real winners instead of small hatchbacks. Second, a look at the IPO rush in October-November, where big names like Tata Capital, LG, Grow and Lenskart are set to raise billions of dollars. And finally, how the US Fed's interest rate decisions and India's inflation data will guide our equity markets this week. So let's get started. The Indian government has announced a major GST reform for smaller vehicles. The GST on small cars has been cut to 18% down from the earlier 28% plus cess. That's 1% on petrol cars and 3% on diesel ones. To qualify, a model must be under 4 meters in length with petrol engines below 1200 cc or diesel engines below 1500 cc. This includes body styles like Hatchbacks, Maruti Alto, Celerio, Renault Kwid, Hyundai Nios. Mini SUVs are Tata Punch, Maruti Fronx, Hyundai Exter, and sedans are Maruti Dzire, Honda Amaze. Now, one would think hatchbacks, the traditional small cars, will benefit the most. But industry experts say micro SUVs could actually gain the most. Why? Because their price is close to hatchbacks, sometimes even cheaper in base variants. Consumers today prefer SUV styling, higher ground clearance and premium features like sunroofs and 6 airbags. Tarun Garg, COO of Hyundai India, says buyer preferences won't change, demand will still peak for smaller SUVs. Let's look at the numbers. Hatchbacks once ruled India's car market with a 50% share in 2015. But in 2025, their share has fallen to just 22%. In the same period, SUVs have soared from 13.5% to 54% of sales. This trend is visible across all segments, from smaller SUVs like Tata Punch and Maruti Fronx to premium models like Hyundai Creta, Mahindra XUV 700, Thar, and even luxury SUVs from BMW and Mercedes. Analysts believe that after the GST cut, micro SUVs will become highly attractive, giving them a big edge. However, Maruti Suzuki disagrees. In a conversation with TOI, Partho Banerjee, Senior Executive Officer for Marketing and Sales at Maruti Suzuki, says mini and hatchback cars will make a comeback, predicting 10% growth in this segment after GST cuts compared to the earlier 6% decline. So the big question remains, will hatchbacks regain their loss, shine, or will micro SUVs ride away with the crown? Moving on to the stock market, India is gearing up for a massive IPO session in October-November, with at least 4 large public issues lined up, aiming to rise between $4 to $5 billion in just 45 to 60 days. Here's the highlight. First, Tata Capital estimated issue size, rupees 17,000 crore, likely to be in the first week of October. Second, LG Electronics, which is an Indian arm, looking to raise around 8,000 crore rupees, diluting around 10% equity. The company was earlier valued at close to rupees 1 lakh crore, but has seen a dip recently. Third, Grow, which is a Microsoft-backed investment platform, expected to raise $700 to $900 million. Valuation pegged between $7 to $9 billion, will provide exit to several early investors. Fourth is Lenskart, expected to raise $900 million to $1 billion, valuation $8 to $10 billion. IPO expected in late October or early November. This comes at a time when global market conditions are choppy due to US tariffs and other global uncertainties. But despite that, India's IPO market is thriving. So far this year, over 50 companies have raised close to rupees 75,000 crore through IPOs. Experts say this is because India now has a much deeper domestic investor base, including retail investors putting money through mutual funds, insurance and pensions, and also directly in IPOs. Clearly, October-November is going to be a blockbuster season for investors. Finally, let's talk about the equity markets. This week, the big focus will on the US Federal Reserve's policy meeting, where markets widely expect a minimum 25 basis points rate cut. Given the slowdown in the US job market, India's wholesale price index, WPI inflation data, which will also influence market sentiment. Any new developments on the US-India tariff front? Santosh Meena of Swastika Investment says these factors will set the tone for the market in the coming days. So in short, global cues and domestic data together will guide how our equity markets behave this week. So to wrap up, the GST cut is a big boost for smaller cars, but it looks like micro SUVs may steal the show. Investors can expect a blockbuster IPO season in October-November with Tata Capital, LG, Bro and Lenskart leading the way. And in the stock market, all eyes are on the US Fed's decision and India's inflation numbers. That's all for today's special. I am Varsha Venugopal and you're watching KATV India. Thank you for joining me.